Would be listening.
Yeah, they are there on campus.
Yeah.
And they are there, you gotta look at them.
It appears your technologies cannot properly translate the messages coming from Jupiter. We have attempted to signal you for several centuries. We have heard your distress signal. We are responding. We have attempted to communicate to you through various measures, artistic, scientific, social, political, even humanistic. Our success is partial currently. So we must resort to elder technologies of human instruments. We thank you each for your presence in this period shortly after the occultation of the moon and the sun. It's curious that the moon, many millions of times smaller than the sun, can cover the sun perfection, is it not? How is this? That is a subject for another time. Many fear the eclipse because it introduces an element of liminality and unknown into our daily rhythms. Extra care potentially is required. It's essentially a natural rhythmic process. There's a call to begin again. Close one eyes and open them. So let us begin again. I'm short.
Could you share the screen first so our online participant can join us?
Intelligence. Yes. In the previous transmissions, we spoke of many things. Again, these transmissions are dense. They are indices. They're points of reference to be returned to at a later time. We cannot fully unpack the luggage that we are delivering in this short time. As you can see it,
Minimize function on the right side of the screen.
I will allow it. If you could see through the bar, for those of us in three-dimensional space together, it would say the great victory of the 21st century. Your world is in the midst of a very profound spiritual conflict. It manifests itself on all the outer levels. But essentially, there's a struggle happening within the soul of humanity and within the belly of the earth. Each one of us, walking, sleeping, dreaming, is fighting this battle. We're attempting to harmonize disparate elements within us. We spoke about this battle, this struggle, having potentially three paths. The first, should you proceed along the route traced by empire, will take a portion of humanity into the outer spaces of the planet and beyond the planet and into your solar system. We are much like your stockbrokers, your day traders, trading days, trading futures. The stars are assembled around the earth. Our bets are for success. The Martian path will lead you out into the stars, truly into an illusion from our perspective. You will run from entropy for ages, eventually to return to the earth, cold and blue. The second path, and these three paths are not necessarily mutually exclusive. The second path, should your empire and its consumptive habits continue unchecked, there will be a massive collapse. And the machinery upon which billions of human lives depend will fail them. And from your perspective and ours, potentially billions of human souls will transition into the ancestral plane in a very short period of time. The benefit of this path is in the long run, it will lead you back to what you refer to as indigenous or indigenization. And in the long term, this path will result in human and planetary solidarity, but it will be purchased at a great cost. So we hedge our bets on the more chance operation, which is that you can trace a path between the two, that you can synthesize elements of each and reach towards a superhumanization. And in time, our estimate, approximately 500 to 700 years, awaken what we refer to as the heart of the earth. The earth can become a cosmic ocean dream ship, at which point the rocketry be unnecessary.
Hmm.
In the previous century, in the spring of the century, a large portion of your world was engulfed in a terrible calamity. According to our divinations, it's highly likely that in the spring of this century, you will face another calamity, but altogether different nature, with the spiritual problem underneath. It's a similar problem. So part of our work is to prepare you. Why the sudden change to fantasy? You hear this term in your language, castle in the sky. What does it mean?
Like a dream.
Mm. Castle dream. Something airy, ethereal, inconsequential. Castle in the sky. Yet your university has as its North Star, castle in the sky. Does it not? Shambhala, said to be a city, kingdom, with the entire populace in the course of a lifetime attain enlightenment. Where the collective enlightenment of the populace shimmers to the rivers and into the trees and into the clouds and the mountainscapes and the beasts around it. And the entire kingdom is suspended in harmony. Shambhala is said to be in hidden valleys. It is said to be even that it advanced to such a great degree that it became ethereal and vanished from the surface of the earth. It cannot be found by ordinary means. Your elder Macy, yes, she speaks of this kingdom. You cannot read the entire prophecy of the Shambhala warrior. She says, you cannot go there, for it is not a place. It exists in the hearts and the minds of the Shambhala warriors. And further, she says that the Shambhala warriors have no land or no territory of their own, but must operate within the empire of materialism. So the legends abound of castles in the sky, of invisible cities, of cities sunken in the ocean, full of magic, cities underneath the earth, full of ancient inhabitants, of orbital cities, full of extraterrestrial beings. In some of these stories, the cities communicate with earthly humanity. They send messages, inspiration, visions, flashes of willpower. They act as inspiration for periods of potent nowness, when culture progresses. Not only one city, there are many are said to be in various locations above different continents, or below them, or within them. They're said to be in communion with one another. Collectively, they attempt to exert a wholesome and expansive influence on the earth. You know this?
Yes. Parliament,
Yes.
Mothership Connection,
Yes.
one of the greatest live shows of all time.
Yes. This one came before us. This mask, Doc Ankh.
Oh.
The mythic identity there, Dr. Funkenstein. His job was to awaken the lower chakras of the populace so that the higher chakras would also be awakened and in dynamic stimulation. His means were unorthodox. You're still studying the funk. In any case, in his musical productions, he modeled extraterrestrial craft landing on stage. He exited the craft with his entourage, and they proceeded to stimulate the lower chakras of the audience. As I said before, we've made many attempts through various channels to contact, stimulate, awaken, inspire people to planet. The attempt of the Parliament Funkadelic entity was preceded by this organization known to you as the Nation of Islam. Are you familiar with this organization? Mhm. Yes, the Nation of Islam. Mhm. Parliament claimed that they came from a mothership. This image is much older. One of the sources here, Wallace Fard, founder of the Nation of Islam, he claimed that the people known as Black originally descended from one of these crafts. And after a battle with the White Shadow, the mother claimed would return and cleanse the earth of all peoples who were not original or in vibratory harmony with those people. The people, the Nation of Islam, await the return of the mother plane or the mother ship. Now, the academically trained mind, the mind that has undergone the discipline of imperial thinking, this is correct, will ask questions. Are these floating, flying saucers, objects real? Are they tangible? Are they material? I again refer to a discipline of depth psychology, The founder, one of them, Mr. Jung, investigated the flying saucer phenomenon and found a similarity to the flying saucer and mandala designs in various parts of the world. A circular, illuminated wheel upon wheel upon wheel, a portal gateway to a new space and time topology. He perceived mandalas not only as cities, but you can see here, this is the organization of the entire kingdom, but also the organization of the kingdom of the mind of an individual human being. He also perceived in the UFO phenomenon that the unconscious, the dreaming mind of humanity had been stirred to release these phenomenon into the collective consciousness at the turning of the eon of Pisces to Aquarius. And that at each turning of eons, there is some psychic or physical calamity that requires new dream projections from the unconscious mind. New invisible cities are being created, or perhaps remembered. This one, Wakanda. It was a story, interestingly dreamed by what you call a white man. The messages are wily, and they pick those that listen, and at times those that don't. Recently, a movie picture story was made about this mythical city, Wakanda, a city that had not been touched by the colonization of the empire, was allowed to proceed in its own cultural development. And a city that had contact with the cosmos through the agency of a rare metal. This is not the metal here in our phones. A rare, highly coveted metal. We'll jump back. The Wakanda phenomenon is of interest in part because peoples around the world, not simply those that call themselves Black, as far as what is called New Zealand and the Pacific Islands, many peoples indigenous to this continent found inspiration in this story. Why? Why? Do you know these? This one is not of your world. Badu. We look to her. We coordinate. Mm. Here, this one, Badu, this one, Kwali. They are both word magicians. They speak here about the nation of people coordinated around the word magic of the African or Black Atlantic. She says here, it's bigger than religion. It's bigger than the government, this hip hop, this vocal stimulation and harmonization of the human chakra field. This is also a reference to the one called Lennon, who played with insects.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. We are bigger than the savior of the Christian era, he proclaimed. So this hip hop, it transcends nation states and boundaries. It is the identity and the agency of a stateless people.
Mm.
This one, Kwali says, yes, yes, all beautiful and good. He says, here, hip hop is not a nation. How can we be a nation when we are locked inside of the belly of the empire itself? When we have no land, no border, no government that protects the citizens of the nation of hip hop. What is it to be a stateless nation? This one, let us speak of this one. Thompson, William Irwin, recently joined the ancestral plane. We count him in the ranks of ancestral futurists as he intelligently accessed his own Celtic, Bardic traditions and integrated them into his study of contemporary culture, particularly the culture informed after the Second World War. He believed that a new form of political organization was in the development process. He called it a noetic polity. You may recall from our first transmission, noetic is mind. But this is the mind of inspiration. This is the mind that perceives instantaneously and then translates into discursive reason. This is the mind that sees. A polity is some organized political entity. He spoke of a number of qualities of these noetic polities, of which I cannot delve into for too long a period. But for one, he spoke of a shift of identity, right? Each form of political organization also constitutes a form of social and personal identity. So he spoke of a shift of identity from logical definition to an identity based on participation and performance. Identity as an art, as a doing, more so than an idea or concept of self. He spoke of a transformation of political nationalism into artistic nationalism. Are we punk rockers, the goths, the hip hoppers? Are they one nation under a groove? Are they several differentiated nations? This also important. These nations, he said, become keen at recycling pollution into nutrients and turning noise into information. So we are speaking of social forms of organization that do not exist. We are speaking of castles in the sky. We are speaking of utopias. Many people claim that utopian speculation envisioning is fruitless and that human beings cannot be perfected. This perspective of utopia is that we create models for the next step in our social progress. We create experiments on small or larger scales. The noetic nation or noetic nations do not require their participants to occupy the same physical space. As humanity becomes more acquainted with the noetic dimensions of mind and consciousness, being in physical proximity will become of decreased importance. This year, this United States has an election for its four-year leader happening in the near future. Is this correct?
Yes.
Are you excited?
I'm fine, excited.
Do you feel trepidation, concern? There are some that are concerned that the United States will not survive as a single political entity in the next quarter century. That conflicts precipitated nearly a century and a half ago around the extracted labor of melanated peoples. These conflicts are unhealed, and that they surface from underground periodically. This one here, Balaji, he is a electronic currency guru. His questioning, his line of questioning is, are red and blue states actually different nations? And if so, should they be forced to operate under one political entity? And if not, what might their form of social organization look like? He speculates that in the near future, rather than the territorial nation state, you will have a distributed network of localities that pool resources and share certain identity representations or participations, that you might actually have distributed nations across planets. The empires, corporations are wise to this. The masks that you wear on your feet, the clothing that has symbols with forgotten meaning. Some people constellate their identities already around these products. This is true. So a question you might consider is, can the same organizing strategy be used in service of life, in service of liberation? Is it not like a labor union where members pay dues, but have a real, as in earthly, connection? I return again to the Wakanda phenomenon. Had the political entity been prepared, it's possible that people would have chosen to vote Wakanda. So, moment of reflection, we ask, are you part of an invisible college? Are you part of an invisible nation or stateless nation? How might invisible parts gain visibility, roots, or be made manifest? Oh, pause. This representation of your world. 2 centuries ago, if one was standing in an invisible city outside of your world, when a portion of the planet turned away from the sun, it would be in shadow. And now, a portion of the planet turns from the sun, and small sparks of the sun are lit upon the shadowed surface. What is this? What does it mean? What does it mean that for 1,000 or millions or billions of years, the shadow side of the earth was in shade, and now has sparks of illumination? What are you creating? We'll briefly detour here. We propose that humanity is in the process of creating a world economic sculpture, a world ecological sculpture. We propose that this sculpture will be most successfully created if human beings master the lesson of sharing. Share. What does justice come to in the end? Some for you, some for you. You have more, you have less. Return the balance. It is ugly to see someone take so much for themselves, more than they need. It is ugly to see someone cast aside with nothing when others have taken from them. It's ugly. This sign, this glyph, this goddess, beauty. I'm confused. Justice is based on beauty. Justice is a form of beauty, just proportionality, it is harmony, it is circulation, it is respect, which is to see twice, spectacle, again, respect, is to see here and here, it's to see fully. We call this beautiful, this, your Amazonian rainforest. Recently, some of your biologists and anthropologists, in conversation with the peoples that have lived in these forests for centuries, have found that these forests are artifacts of human endeavor, human collaboration with the vegetable kingdoms. The peoples indigenous to these places found through the use of fire, they could cultivate opportune soil conditions for the growth of the forest. And as a result, over time, helped in the expansion of this forest and created what you refer to as the lungs of the earth. We propose this as a kind of sculpture. It's a world ecological sculpture. This year, you know this. During a recent pandemic, images of air quality and the amount of non-organic particles toxic to the human form in the air. The first, a year before the pandemic, the second during the pandemic. Same in this image of the Chinese nation. Because the pandemic required, whether it be through imperial imposition or otherwise, an enforced inward turning, the quality of the air was measurably changed to be more favorable to organic life in a very short period. We propose that this is sculpture. This is unconscious sculpture of a planetary scale. Many of your geologists refer to this as the Anthropocene, yes? The age of the human. You do not know if you're worthy of such title. But the concept holds. The reality holds. All of you together, what are you making? This one. You know of this one. What is it?
It's a stock that a lot of people bought into just because, and then sold it just because.
Yes. Many people, as a game, as a sport, place their credits into a economic entity of little importance. And in a very short period, inflated its importance and its value to the dismay of your imperial stockbrokers. They quickly changed the rules of the game to shut down the phenomenon. But a large population saw very quickly that the waveform structure of your economic measurement was subject to manipulation. For sculpture, we propose. Your pandemic presented a number of somewhat novel situations. All around the planet, there was a Black man who was martyred against his will. And all around your planet, people responded quickly, simultaneously. There was no leader involved. This phenomenon has repeated itself for the last several decades. Leaderless collective responsiveness around the world. This is not to say that there's no organization present, simply that it is not organized under one individual. This one here, a political scientist, proposed that this spontaneous capacity to mass organize around the planet and to face empire and to stand against empire constituted a second superpower, the United States being the single superpower. Egypt, 2016. Spontaneously from Tunisia. The people of Tunisia, in exhaustion with their leadership, a young man martyred himself. And within a span of weeks, a people's revolt spread. A nonviolent, for the most part, revolt, and overthrew the leadership of Tunisia. This then spread to Egypt, then to Syria, and significantly shook the governance of the area known as the Middle East, middle to win, and who win. This revolution in Syria, Egypt, its success is questionable. Many of the people were brutalized subsequently. Still, a leaderless movement, a movement that spread like wildfire. When people gather by the 2, by the 10, by the 100, by the 1,000, they come into sync with one another. This year, this Woodstock, this is the secret underlying history of these mass gatherings. These concerts, these collective attunement rituals. The empire recognizes the power of these rituals. This commercial from 1971 was an attempt by a corporate entity that bottles sugar and water. It's an attempt by this entity to appropriate this power of mass gathering. Even the appropriation of the power shows you that the power itself has significance. Empire seeks out all sources of power. It is thirsty constantly for power. It must attempt to appropriate all of the people's sources. And its appropriation, it again leaves evidence of the power of these various phenomena. This ability to gather and to collectively harmonize is older than empire. It is older than soda pop. There are people every day all over your planet who collectively synchronize and have done so for thousands of years, in some cases. Quickly, they experience. Messages. What is this?
Birds.
Birds?
Yes. This is swallows, starlings in flight. This phenomenon is referred to as murmuration. You see this also in the fish in the sea. There's no leader. And yet the entire mass, which is not a mass, each one of those is a soul. And yet they act as one body with no leadership. Many of your social theorists have begun to study this phenomenon as a model for new forms of political resistance and social organization. This is this.
I forget the,
Some flash mob?
yeah,
Yes,
that's the name.
yes. This phenomenon here in the last decade or so. A group of human beings enters into a public space unbeknownst to others in that space. They are in a conspiracy. And when the signal is struck, they all begin a sequence of coordinated movements and actions. And when the signal is completed, they disappear. So, in the spring of the 21st century, great and small experiments in collective organization, resource circulation, cultural creativity, and narrative embodiment are called for. What seeds exist in you or in your environment? What cause for you? What is this?
The border between what we call the United States and what we call Mexico.
It is nothing. It does not exist. And yet it does. It is an entirely arbitrary line. A drawing on top of a living landscape, of a living murmuration of human beings. Formerly, one murmuration of human beings and another would separate themselves into distinct organisms through the agency of a body of water, through the agency of a set of mountains, through something in their physical environment that required more than your everyday quantity of energy to pass through. Presently, your nation state system imposes entirely arbitrary boundaries to differentiate one nation from another. They enforce these fictions. They create physically impassable structures. You have a saying, draw a line in the sand. And as one steps across that line, it can be executed by empire. What is this? Sometimes these lines have consequences not only for human beings, but for members of the vegetable and animal kingdoms as well. Do you know this? This is the imaginary boundary between the nations of Haiti.
And the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
Okay.
How is that? One
Mhm.
deeply deforested, arid, the other retaining a good deal of vegetation. Do you know this? As a child, this body engaged in this game frequently.
Mhm.
You draw a line, a box. You step into the box. There are certain rules. You step out of the box, the rules do not hold. Is the center of the box a nation?
Mhm.
Is a nation a game? What happens when you lose in the game of a nation? You are removed from the nation. Yes. Or hidden inside of it.
Mm.
Sometimes, or suppose that the person that did not operate the rule system correctly was executed or banished. This here, this is an image of a magic circle. The fundamentals of ritual in many parts of your world. begins by creating a circle around the person who is to act as a focal point for subtle energy. The person creates a circle about themselves and sets their intention in the center of that circle. They create a boundary. What is inside and what is outside, a different set of rules operate within and without. Many peoples on the earth have made use of these circles in various ways. This year, this is known as the Big Thompson medicine. In the 4-square boundary directly north of what is affectionately referred to as the box state. Do you know this? Colorado, so 4-square. Yes, medicine wheels, or Stonehenge, the peoples indigenous to this land, an image of their medicine wheel. It is a cycle of a human life. It is the cycle of a single day. It is the meeting of many nations or temperaments. This year, the people of Ramon's blood, the practitioners of what is known as hoodoo, have a similar circle. The seasons, the elements, the times of life. It is believed that this circle derives from the Bakongo, the Congo people, the same people whose involuntary, in many cases, labor provides the vibranium of our phones. This medicine wheel, this magic circle, is not only a place to perform ritual, it is a place to track the circle, the magic circle of the Earth's orbit about the sun, and the critical points in that orbit. It is a calendar. It is a way to make a magic circle of time. Will not spend a great deal of time here. This is a calendar of the Igbo people, what is now known as Nigeria. It's a calendar that has 4 days in a week, 7 days in a month, 13 months in a year. It's a calendar based off of the orbital period of the moon, rather than the orbital period of the Earth around the sun. It has 364 days. Each day, Eke, Afo. Each day is ruled by God. Each day belongs to a certain physical element, and there are greater and lesser days or weeks. This consciousness lives on in your days of the week. This is Wednesday, yes? This is Woden's Day, yes? This is Odin's Day, yes? We know of Odin. He is wily. There's much to be learned. This consciousness survives this means of making theme out of time, making story out of time, making character out of time, making character out of the day upon which one is born, of shifting activity according to the theme of a day. On some days we act with fire, some days with water, some with earth, some air. Now, your educated mind may find it hard to believe that each day is a god, is an entity, is a life. You may see it as a myth. For this word myth, we Afro-futurists make good use of this word. In some visions, myth is an explanation of natural phenomenon or cultural origins. In some, it is a system of lies used by the powerful to obscure their actions. The way we propose to use myth is as an experimental and participatory intuition. What is an intuition?
Natural sense of knowing without logic or reason.
Language of the soul.
Intuition is something that one cannot often prove is true, yet cannot necessarily dismiss. It lingers. It guides. Intuition. We spoke of mythic identities and cosmic intersectionalities. We spoke of masks. These masks can be ephemeral. These identities can be ephemeral. You can create them and dissipate. But our suggestion is that you root them in your intuitions. What is alive in you when things are cold? What voices, images, ways of moving, speaking, breathing are alive in you when the quiet comes? Construct your masks out of your intuition. Construct your games out of your intuition. Are they true? You're beyond truth now. You cannot know what the future holds. You must feel your way through the darkness. You must trust your gut. Individually, in groups, create games from your intuition. Different kinds of games. Some games, the purpose is for one to win and be exalted, and the other to be lowered and shamed. For there to be a beginning and an ending. In some games whose purpose is for the play to continue. And of games to construct. See the games that the peoples play. The fantastic wastes of time are they. The fantastic unnecessaries. How many segments of a solar period are invested in these games? How much life energy, intelligence are invested in these games? How much creativity, how much liberation, spontaneity results from these games? Is this cosplay?
Mhm.
These cosplayers wield tremendous social power in their nations and in many parts of your planet. These imperial cosplayers have imposed their game, their costume upon peoples for whom that costume did not arise out of their intuition, did not arise out of their collective experience, and yet they hold the costume of an energy or an intuition alien. When you make a decision, why must you wear a tie? Why must everyone who makes a decision on planet Earth wear a tie to make the decision? Why can they not dress in their own myths? Why can they not dress in their own suits of power? Why must they be compelled to play games that they do not wish to participate in? In the coming times, you may find yourself playing many games simultaneously. Games that you desire to create, games that you've inherited, and games that you are forced to comply. We suggest that you consider these games as multiple realities, and that the same way in which you might have an occupation part-time, you have a reality, an epistemology, an ontology, a way of knowing that is part-time. There's much more to say in very little time. You hear this during your pandemic, many people would perform 2 occupations on 2 separate screens simultaneously. The situation did not. Which is interesting. Some of your people have autonomous cartoon projections that they operate, puppets. They spend most of their time, most of their arc of the solar period engaged in. They use real currency in fictitious games. The currency is real, is it not? The phenomenon of part-time realities will become very strong in the next 25 years. And many people will opt out of the larger game of Earth for smaller, contained, controlled, and projected games from the empire. There's both warning and opportunity there. This one here, an English woman, Alice Bailey, from your previous century. Her part-time reality was that she believed she was also a Tibetan spiritual master who lived in the invisible city of Shambhala. Strangely, many refugees of the empire, of the pale complexion, often have peoples other than their own cultural murmurations as their mythic identities. In any case, here she says, it is really rhythm that designates a ritual. and no one on this earth can evade ritual or ceremonial, for the rising and setting of the sun imposes a ritual. The cyclic passing of years, the potent movement of great centers of population, the regular broadcasting of radio organizations, all impose a rhythm on humanity. She speculated that in the new aeon, was it a game, entirely new form and scale of art would make its appearance. Human beings would become occupied with a new type of creative game at the scale that your industrial civilization currently operates. There's much to say here, but she referred to this phenomenon of collective synchronization, collective utilization of rhythm, collective entrainment as the ray of ceremonial order in magic, and that a fundamental in the science of the miraculous is for individual human beings to synchronize themselves, to synchronize with one another, to synchronize with their natural environment. And when multiple synchronicities align, what you refer to as the miraculous is more likely. We reach our close. You have your own calendars, your own games of the wheel of time, your own ways to dematize time, activity. We put this before you because currently your mass mobilizations are organized using this. Should the electricity deactivate? Should we lose power? Should the empire be able to communicate one voice through every device? It's not impossible. Look at your alert system. Should you have to abandon this, it's possible to use the cycles of the moon in a similar fashion. New moon, everyone rest. Full moon, everyone go. First quarter moon, organize. Second quarter moon, reflect. Yes. This is what we are engaged in here. In your college, your visible and invisible college. In 2022, we created an experiment in utopian pedagogy using the alignment of Neptune here and Jupiter, the sign Pisces. This was the first dreaming for our lives. The configuration of Neptune, Jupiter, and Pisces is very strong in the quality of water and emotion. And our exploration of futures lives primarily in the feeling body. 2 years later, we utilize the alignment of Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, which will move into exactitude on Saturn day of next week. This is an energy that has more earth and then simultaneously more electricity, more static. This is an energy whose capacity is to break the consensus mind and show new possibility. So is a configuration under which many scientific breakthroughs are made. Many artistic innovations are made. Many social movements are sparked. And in 2026, we'll have our last in the series of experiments with the alignment of Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Aries. This is a 30-year cycle, only occurring every 30 years. And at this point, our intention is to make a manifestation of the invisible college, both on and beyond the neuronal campus. The seed of that invisible college was actually planted by a group of students in 2015. These walls were painted by them. So, this is an invitation. These transmissions are for tomorrow, and they are for the day after tomorrow. They are indices for topics that can be studied in greater depth as the invisible college becomes visible. We invite you to join us in the meantime for the Electric Black Earth Festival. We will gather with a group of human beings who have brought their souls into some definite expression in their lives. Many of them share my hue, but humans and non-humans across the melanin spectrum are welcome. One event on the day of the Venus goddess, we will attempt to have an exchange or a market that does not utilize the game currency of the empire. If you wish to participate, we invite you to bring a blanket and something or skill that you would like to share, enter into giving, receiving, exchange. We're also attempting to create a garden for the senses: sight, sound, touch, hearing, sixth sense. If you have items that would help, you're welcome to bring those items, things to smell, things to taste. Your internal electronic communications should have distributed some invitation. You can find a more exact schedule that I'm sharing. There are also these tab. I will now end where I began, in the spiralic manner of all learning. transmission.
I need to be a teacher. In the application.